Howdy, Sunday school teachers. This is Pastor Cholak. This week, we're going to take a small hiatus from Enduring Faith Bible curriculum to celebrate the Reformation. The day is going to be a complete celebration from church to Sunday school to Lutherfest, all the way till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I hope you enjoy the study of the Reformation, and I have a few tidbits to help as you are having a little bit of fun with your students during the Sunday school hour. First of all, I'd like you to cover or at least read through the text from Matthew 11. There are two texts appointed for Reformation Sunday. One we're going to hear in church, and that's from John chapter 8, and this is the other one. So in this way, our children will hear both of these texts, which are really great. Jesus said, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John, and if you are willing to accept it, he is Elijah who is to come. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. But to what shall I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to their playmates. We have played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is justified by her deeds." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven has suffered violence. Yes, that's why we need a fortress. And what is our fortress? It's a mighty fortress. It's a fortress that no enemy can defeat. It is our God. It is Jesus Christ who fights for us, of Sabaoth, Lord, and there is no other God. Yes. So today we're going to look at how the church is that safe place, right? That we do have attacks coming against us from the outside, and that Jesus has made us safe and secure in his body. We could use a couple of analogies, like the ark is that safe place that Noah and all the animals were against the raging floods that were going on outside. So also, likewise, the church is an ark of safety from the raging floods of evil and the enemy's attacks from the outside. We could look at the wrapping of the righteousness of Jesus in our baptism as that which saves us and protects us from the attacks of the devil and the world and our sinful nature, that the work of the Spirit is to sanctify and to make us holy. So all of these wonderful things. What I'd like you to do is read that text and perhaps pause and explain some of those things. The fact that we do live in a safe place because of our Lord's cross and the work of his cross. The work of dying and rising again has made us his own people. And if we're his own people, we live with him forever. Okay. And talk maybe a little bit about John the Baptist, Elijah, who was the great prophet of old, Moses, who gave us the law. These are great little talking points, right? As far as the Reformation is concerned, though, please tell the story of where this all starts. Way back in 1517, Martin Luther is a professor at the University of Wittenberg. He has, in this course of study, preparing himself to become a professor, has begun unfolding the scriptures in their original languages. And when you're a normal monk doing your normal thing, which Luther had done for a very long time, you don't get to read the scriptures. The scriptures were a locked book to most of the church, most of the laity, most of all of the pastors, monks, and nuns. But as a professor teaching these particular things, he was taught Greek and Hebrew, and the scriptures were open to him, and he began to see these beautiful gospel truths and the dividing of that word into law and gospel. But he was seeing some weird things going on in the church, particularly one thing that drove him to nail his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg was a guy named John Tetzel, who was selling indulgences And an indulgence was a piece of paper that someone would buy in order to knock off time in purgatory. And purgatory is a Roman Catholic teaching of a place you go before you go to heaven. Most definitely everybody who went to purgatory, according to the teaching, was going to go to heaven. So it was, yes, you're saved, but you can't quite get to heaven yet. You need to go to purgatory because there are some things that you need to work off. Some of the sins, the temporal nature of the consequences of your sins still need some help. And if you buy an indulgence, pay a little bit of money, get a piece of paper, you get a little bit of time off from that cleansing of time, according to John Tetzel and the church at the time. And so Luther writes his 95 Theses. These were talking points that he wanted to just engage in a debate with the church. And so he nails them to the church door. And the church door at that time in history served as really a community bulletin board. And he wanted to have a discussion, a debate with Tetzel or with anyone else that had that other side. And he really wanted the Pope to know that these things were going on. And he believed that if the Pope knew down in Rome what was happening in the church, that he would tell them all to stop, because the gospel was such a sweet and beautiful thing that all of us need to hear. Well, there is this interesting development, a thing called the Gutenberg printing press. And somebody came along and saw Luther's 95 Theses on the church door, and they took it down. They stole it, took it to the printing press and made copies and started sending it out in all of these different directions. And this is what really made the Reformation fly, is that when Luther would write something, the printing press would take it and make copies of it. That didn't happen in earlier attempts to reform the church. But for Luther it does, and this information goes out, which invigorates the people. He writes in Latin for the 95 Theses, but later he's going to write these small tracts in German, which the common people can read, and his ideas and his thoughts, his centering points on the gospel are just disseminated out, and it's like really awesome stuff, right? Okay. Well, he's called to a thing in the city of Worms, and he is asked to retract his stuff by the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, whose name was Charles, and the Roman Church, the Roman Catholic Church. Well, Luther refuses to do so, and so the other side of that coin of the 1517 nailing the 95 Theses on the church door is the "Here I stand, I can do no other. I refuse to recant" moment in Luther's early work. And so he is taken into hiding. He is kidnapped by the elector, and it is at this point, this is a great thing to tell your students, is a great point that he translates the scriptures now for the first time into the common tongue of the people. It becomes a book which the German people can open. Now, maybe not the first time to the common tongue, because when the Bible was first translated into Latin, that was the common tongue of the people, and that's why it's called the Vulgate. Something that was vulgar was common. And if you wanted to not be vulgar, you used the proper, right, which was Greek or Hebrew. Anyway, this now opens the scriptures to not only professors and high-ups in the church, but to the ordinary people. So some great points here. 95 Theses, 1517, in response to John Tetzel and his indulgences. One of the famous things that Tetzel used to say was, for every coin that in the coffer rings a soul from purgatory springs. So nice little alliteration and poetry there. And Luther puts these up. The Gutenberg printing press, which was invented around 1440, disseminates these theses around and sort of gives fire to the Reformation. Then Luther is called to the Diet of Worms. Maybe you want to talk about the fact that they weren't actually eating worms, but they were in a city called Worms. It just in German called Worms, W's or V's, right? And it wasn't a diet like they were eating, but a diet as in a conference, a meeting, right? Okay. And he says there, here I stand, I can do no other. He stands upon the word and the gospel alone. Okay. Now, lots of other things about the Reformation happen, and those happen in following years. But those are the highlights that I hope you can share with your students. A couple hymns to think of, right, is A Mighty Fortress is Our God. That's 656 in your hymnal. A mighty fortress is our God. Again, tying back to that Matthew text from chapter 11. Okay. The one right before A Mighty Fortress in our hymnal is Lord, keep us steadfast in your word. Lord, keep us steadfast in your word. Curb those who by deceit or sword would wrest the kingdom from your Son, and bring to naught all he has done. That the text that we learned in church, that we'll hear at church at 9:30, is from John 8, and that says that the Lord abides with us, and if the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. And so perhaps abide with me, or abide with us, dearest Jesus, which is 9:19. So some wonderful things there. Catechism connection, of course, I would go high level this time and just cover the 6 chief parts: 10 Commandments, Apostles' Creed, Lord's Prayer, Baptism, Confession, Absolution, Sacrament of the Altar, and just sort of see how Luther has given those things to us, that we would see the gospel, that the law would clear the way, and that the cross of Christ would come up into the midst of our lives as we are sanctified and kept in the true faith. All right, I hope you enjoy your time with your students. I put some coloring pages, some activity pages attached to our email that's going out, and if you have any questions, reach out to me. Have a great day. God's peace.